Okay. All right, I'll start. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the very first session of the Diplomatic Room. I'm Mirza Salim and I'll be moderating this discussion along with the main host, the president, Mr. Enoch Tumuine. So the Diplomatic Room team is pleased to host a distinguished guest, Madam Tsegga, the president of UN Women USA, NC chapter and the founder of the Peer Leadership Institute. So our guest's driving force is building a better world by advocating for social change, social impact. She has over 20 years of corporate leadership experience with renowned corporations such as Credit Suisse, Wells Fargo, IBM. She's a speaker and a certified coach who helps individuals and organizations improve their leadership capability. She's also a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School of Public Policy, Leadership, and Ethics, and the UCLA Anderson School of Management. So dear participants, join me in welcoming our guest as she shares with us how to prepare ourselves for a career in the field of diplomacy and global affairs. So once again, welcome, Ms. Medine. We're all looking forward to hearing your insights on this subject and engage with you. And lastly, little reminder to all, kindly mute your mic when you're not speaking and raise your hand if you want to do so. Keep your camera open if you feel comfortable for a deeper engagement. And lastly, you can drop your questions in the chat box and I'll ask them on your behalf during the Q&A session. I'll now pass the floor to Enoch to officially start the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Milza. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I see faces I haven't seen in a while. Fashingavo and new faces too. And to our distinguished guest, Ms. Tsegga. I think I pronounced it well. Very much welcome. And as you've had her bio, yeah, I thought it would be a very nice time to share her insights on how do you work with Credit Suisse. Everyone who knows in the world of finance knows that Credit Suisse is one of the most international organizations in the world of finance. So she bears a lot of experience, and it's indeed our honest and absolute pleasure to host you. So welcome. I'm gonna first, it's gonna be like a free engagement, ask questions, then people will, we take a first half introductory remarks, and then people can chip in, ask questions. But first and foremost, the power of stories change, personal stories change, and can be more inspiration. So I want to ask her, if you can share your story, Ms. Tsegga, what is your personal story to reach all those milestones? What key practical aspects have you employed to reach there, where most young people are yearning to be?
Well,
hello.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Sometimes my voice is a little bit lower pitch, and I think it's I'm so happy and delighted to be in your company as both of you, and thank you for the kind introduction to both of you. As you said, I'm Tsegga. I'm in the business of building a better world, just like all of you in this room. And before I go further, I want to call all of you. And I think you should say, if you're in a room with somebody or by yourself, say, hello, change makers.
Yes.
So you're all change makers. And for me, more than that, also, you are a meaning maker as well. And so I thank you for inviting me. And thank you for the ones that are joining. It's a pleasure. Not only to be in a place like this, but also because we're cultivating some kind of solidarity in action and leadership in action. So I'm impressed more about your stories than mine, but I'm here to tell my story, to share what I know and how I think I could make a difference by being a difference, just like all of you, that you are here to make this, to building a better world. So my upbringing was in Africa, and I lived in, and I came to England first as an asylum seeker. And from there, I moved on to the United States to continue my studies, where I felt that I did, I was lucky enough or privileged enough to really finish up whatever I started. And so that's how I felt it was a good way for me to really, this is the time for me. I've had an amazing experience. It's time for me to give back. And what better place than this, whether it is virtually or even physically, in the times that I did volunteer in many opportunities, whether it was in Tanzania, in Arusha, or it was in Ethiopia, or in Eritrea, or England, or Switzerland. So different places where I have had a chance to really think about what it's like for me to be part of this intergenerational conversation with young people like you, because at the end of the day, let's face it, this world is yours. And you're the one who's going to lead us into a better world. And so my experience is more finding ways through STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and arts and math. And I say that because as a woman and a woman of color, especially in the United States and anywhere else at this time, I'm finding that science and the STEM arena seems to be a place where we get the living wages are, where women can do better for themselves, their families, their communities, and ultimately the planet. So what have I learned and how have I done it is obviously by being in solidarity with all the movements that we have, specifically when it means that we are finding our responsibility, and the relationship that we have to create with each other is really what makes my movement go forward. And I think I'd like to make obviously, I'd like to quote Nelson Mandela when he said that it is one of my favorite quotes, actually two of them are, "It is in your hands to make a better world for all who live in it." That was one, and I can see that in all of you and in all of us. And then the other one that I also felt quite important for me is overcoming poverty is not a task of charity, but it's an act of justice. And I know this room is full of men and women, emerging leaders, people that have high responsibility or family responsibility or nation's responsibility to really make a difference by being a difference. So we're here together. And I know, I also want to say that the fact that you are as young, for me, I consider it to be the X factor. And as you know, in math, what the X factor means, the multipliers, the people that really make a difference, it's you. And I'm here to really find ways for us to connect and continue this conversation, because it's just the beginning of something that we have to engage in.
Powerful. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of background in the history of like employment and background, professional wise. So let's go to the matter today. So there is so many, like, as you know, like compared to other parts of the world, there are few young Africans in those multinational organizations. God knows how many young Africans who are young a bit, who work in like Credit Suisse. Even the last the last CEO, they fired him. A guy from Cote d'Ivoire, I guess. Yeah. So what has prepared you? What key strategies can young people employee to get access to those bigger jobs in international affairs like UN, other international, even the African Union. What key strategies can young people employ really to get there?
Okay. Thank you again for that question. I think it's important that we look at, there is the UN is an organization that I have been part of for quite a few years now. And it is also for the main reason that I was a speaker at the UN in their stakeholder meetings in 2015, when they invited me to speak on behalf of women and girls in STEM. And so that has been my GPS. And so I'm trying to find all the opportunities for me to really make a difference in really the many challenges that we have in the world today. And so, I was listening to the radio when I was coming back this morning from one of my meetings where we were talking about what's happening in Pakistan right now. It's the issue of climate change. What's happening in various nations in Africa, our beautiful, beloved Africa. There's a lot happening in the world. And so the main thing that I've always used, engagement, and find ways to really answer the questions that finding the purpose for me was quite important. So if a job does not seem to be purposeful, if a job does not have an alignment with me as a human being, as I'm making a difference, it was not a place for me to be. So the roles that I played with IBM, for example, was obviously in science first, but I like to be working with human connection. And so I moved on to one was marketing, and then later on into human resources, and specifically the diversity area. The second thing that I did was obviously I was the site manager for, one of the site manager for giving back to the community, whether it was financial or it was talent engagement. So what does one need when you do those kinds of things? For one, I think the best thing to think about is that as generation equality, I think the thing that works for me and that has worked for many of us is that to be intentional, to the ability to raise the capacity and to make sure that I have to exceed the expectations, not only because I am a female and it happened to be that I am a Black woman, but also because it's important for me to really show up and deliver what I'm supposed to be delivering with integrity, with passion. So the quality that I would like to have, the competencies that I would like to be thinking about, what really means for us to be in place in the UN or anywhere else for that matter, is to be a passionate leader, a listener, and an emotionally engaged person, emotionally intelligent, resilient negotiator. Because the world is going through so much, right? So I think there is a need for resilience. I say tech is the new, resiliency is obviously the new currency, and technology is the new purpose for many. But for me, resiliency is what it means for us to continue on being the person that we're meant to be.
Wow. I'm taking some notes. Resilience, like a person tries one thing one time and thinks it's the end of the world, so resilience on what we want and, purpose. Like, I like your idea of being intentional. Mm-hmm. And I want to interrogate that more. What exactly do you mean intentional? Because you always hear like in our social life, but it wasn't my intention to hurt you, like in the sense of, vision, in the sense of leadership. What's the missing link when you see the young people, even across the spectrum, even on the higher leadership spectrum? What's the missing link? What is the intentionality? What should be the intentionality? Yeah.
Well, as you all know, this is a decade of action. Obviously, the Sustainable Development Goal plans are, as I said, my GPS, and they have been like that for the past few years, and they'll continue to be in that. But the second part of this is Africa has also the Agenda 2063, where we're thinking of having a better life for all, by eradicating poverty and looking into prosperity. So intention is about the 7 P's, as I call them, P, the letter P. And so when we summon, intentionality is when you summon our collective wisdom for people, peace, planet, prosperity through private-public partnership. And so when I say that, it is because I believe in the power of the people, especially young people. I mean, Africa is endowed with one of the best gift, which is obviously young people between the age of, I'd say 65% of the population in Africa, as some of you know, statistically is under the age of 35. That is a big dividend for Africa. But are we using it properly? Are our leaders using it intentionally in the way that they need to do? So it's about that. And so intentionality is about being really open-minded, engaged, and also the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So, right?
Yeah.
So when you learn something, you already know something. By the time, I'm sure many of you are in the age of that I just quoted, but you've learned something. But if it's not working, you have to unlearn that one because you're picking up something else and then relearning and really making that difference that you're trying to catch up with. So that's how I feel the intent for us is about an intentional leadership that is action and transformation for the world and for ourselves.
Absolutely. Now, people kind of get more inside about the word intentionality. And I also want to ask you a word on resilience, resilience. Yeah, simple as it may sound, but practical, it's a different dimension. How should we young people in the world of internationalism, multilateralism, and diplomacy, engaging those higher ends, what practical way young people can be resilient in choosing those careers in?
Okay, so resilience is about adaptability, adaptive leadership that is flexible, but also grounded. Grounded in what you know, grounded in what you learn, and grounded in the thing that we really are. We're trying to grapple and then also make that change that is necessary for us to move forward. So in many instances, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but I think many instances we say that we're living upside down right now. So how do we turn that back? Or how do we really make sure that we are okay? Case in point was the issue we had with the COVID situation, right?
Yes.
So how has COVID impacted our nations? How has COVID impacted our families? How has COVID impacted our economy? How has COVID impacted our way of thinking? And so, but for that, obviously the many billions of people that are in this world, thank God for science and thank God for all the different kinds of activities that have happened. There was a lot of adaptation to the situation we had. And so resilience comes from that. And I also, there is one of my favorite person that I read on all the time is Brené Brown. And she talks about resilience. And she talks about other things also amongst the many that she talks about. She's a professor at Houston University. And she talks about resilience. Why is it that we are resilient? And how is it that we're supposed to be making the leap from, oh my God, I can't do this anymore, to exactly where do we need to be in a sustainable way and continue on doing what we're supposed to be doing, but not be overwhelmed or not be underwhelmed also with whatever it's happening, because we have it in ourselves that we are capable of doing. When we do, one of the other challenges that we have right now is that talent is moving from wherever it is. And so many companies and many organizations are having difficulties really managing talent. Many restaurants are closing, or many restaurants are not giving the service, or many companies are not really giving us anything. Regardless of the industry, the employees, the leaders and teams,
Yes.
we're all going to need greater resilience, great and agility.
Means that you kind of schools.
Yeah. So thank you. So I think it's what we do is we have to have some actionable strategies that are obviously important for us to look into finding. We have to find out how do we really find resilience. Is we have to value our emotional intelligence versus our IQ. We also have to invest in our own personal leadership development. That's how you become a resilient person. The third thing that I would say is when we cultivate a growth mindset, somebody who's in a growth mindset is always believing that there is a possibility of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The other one that I would say, number 4, I would call balancing competing priorities. Sometimes you're asked to do something. You're probably having family issues. You're probably having deadlines for your business, or you have projects that you're supposed to be doing. But then again, you also have something else that you might have to care for your parents, or for your daughters, or for your sisters, or your wife, whatever. And so how do we really balance these competing priorities? What are the things that we're using? Because priorities change, right? So
Yes.
where do we look at that? Then the other number 5 I would call is mental health strategy to become a strategic priority for all of us. Because after all this has happened in the world, some of us have lost our jobs, some of us have lost family members, some of us are really caring for the people that have been sick for so long, or our job does not seem to be whatever it is. So there is an issue about managing our mental health as a strategic priority, because if you are not in it, you will be without it, right? So in conclusion, I think I'd say the changing world of our life, our work, requires that we change with it as well, and for many reasons. And so we have to motivate, engage, and attract what we want in life, and have, especially if I have to reiterate, is that to have the growth mindset.
Absolutely. Excellent. You've recultivated it well and given a background for it. Yeah, and I think it's more clear on becoming resilient strategies and becoming that intentional leader. Yeah. So I'll just say one more last question. What key skills one should have? I know there's resilience. That's like a skill set you can, but when you're want to be there to those international jobs or choosing international careers. In your experience, even those multinational organizations, what key skills are they looking for? What kind of mindset are they looking for? What type of attitudes or personalities are they looking for?
Okay, good. Thank you. That's a great question. So when you look at the UN, for example, or any other organizations that you want to join, or some of you probably have your own companies or your own business entities that you're dealing with. But I'm just going to go straight into the UN Charter says. We, the people, work with us, and together we will shape our future. That's their main thing that when you go to their website, it says that. So what does it mean? It means that they're looking for people that are interested in shaping our future. And who are they? Because they're telling us that they're offering full-time jobs, temporary jobs, consultancy jobs, and obviously all those you can find them on the JobNet. And there are different programs that you could look into: the Young Professional Program, the Junior Professional Program, and then also the volunteering opportunities. So what are they looking for? They're looking for people that, again, as I said earlier, passionate leaders that are listeners, and that they have the ability to be resilient negotiators. Because The work of the UN, for example, is all about negotiating. You sit at the negotiation table, you're really talking to people, because the UN does not have much of a, or any other huge organizations like even the African Union, do not have what it really takes to do certain things. And they're all depending on the nations that are really member nations. And so how do we negotiate? So a resilient negotiator is a very, very important talent and skills that is needed on looking for opportunities there. And then when you get the chance to be part of the, you're selected, the best thing to do is to highlight, tell your story on what's important. What stories have data? How do we manage that data? What has happened with that data? And I know for sure many of you have been using that. Where you are, it doesn't have to be too fluffed up. Obviously, limiting your words is quite important. The impact that the data has, how many people were reached, what changed, what kind of transformative experience was it for you and for the clients you're serving. Those are the kind of things that we really, really think are important. And not only for the UN, but I think for any organization where you're just presenting yourself, who you are, and how can you add value or create value to the organization you're coming in. Not only because you are Enoch, but also because Enoch knows these things and I know I can make that difference, and I know, and I've got this information for you to look at and see how much of that data is really attainable, and I can do better for you. That's the kind of work that needs to be highlighted and brought back to a more serious level and the upper level that one wants to be. And then when you bring this kind of information, not only will they perceive you to be an effective leader, an effective or resilient negotiator, but I think they see substance in the work that you do and you want to do for them.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that. So I'm gonna open it to the audience, and thank you so much for sharing those opening remarks and setting the stage for more questions. I believe people have more questions, and I'm gonna hand it back to Milza, the moderator, to take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Ms. Tsegga and Enoch, for the discussion, and Ms. Tsegga for your insights and helpful advice. To our dear participants, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand to speak directly to our speaker. While waiting for questions to come up, I have 3 questions I'd like to ask you. Now that you are the president of UN Women USA, what does your role consist of in that organization, especially in organization for women? That's my first question. My second question would be, from your experience in this field, you have learned and see a lot. So how do you see the current state of diplomacy and international affairs? What are the challenges and opportunities, and how we youth can tap into those resources and challenges and, make an impact? These are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I like this. This is really great. And to correct you, I am the chapter president of North Carolina State, which is obviously here in North Carolina. And as I said, the first question that you have, what's the role that we play in the UN Women USA NC chapter, is that we have 3 roles. One is the awareness about women's issues. Specifically for me, it's the Sustainable Development Goal Plan number 5. And then when we look at the second role that we play is fundraising, which we do that often. And the third one is obviously public policy. Being engaged in some public policy, because that, whatever we're talking about, as much as you wanted it to be, and that's why actually I went back to Harvard and I said, hey, I need to understand this, because I could be talking all the way up to the mountain top, But if there's no policy change, nothing is going to happen. And do we have leaders that are listening? Maybe not. But do we have a passion to do some change and have that resilient negotiation skill to really make this thing happen, having a conversation with your stakeholders and continue to do this for many ways, because the end goal is to make that change. That's one of the things that I really encourage you to be looking at public policy and really find a way how we can nudge people and places to make a difference for the people. The second question you had is about youth. How can they be engaged? I want to say that the fact that you are here in this meeting, the fact that Henok and all of you have created the room, what do you call it?
The diplomatic.
Yes, the diplomatic room is really big. It's big. None of the other peers have thought of this, and I am honored to be one of your speakers today, because diplomacy and development. When you look at the U.S. State Department talk about diplomacy and development, but how much of that is really diplomacy and how much of that is development? Do you want development to be an aid, which is not right? Or do you want it to be development, really helping with people's capacity building and really enjoying that part where you really look into for us to grow? So for example, just for you to know, if some of you have not done that, I participate in the Young African Leadership Institute, which used to be called YALI when Obama president was there, but now it's called the Mandela Washington Fellowship. How many of you have applied to that? Or are you going to be applying and it's going to be ending September 16? Or do you know anything about that? So that's one of the things. In fact, I'm going to be hosting a how to really successfully do your application sometime in the next few days. Probably next week I'll have a quick video on it, or maybe it's going to be like another Zoom session, or maybe on a LinkedIn. So I'm just finding the right platform for me. That's the thing that I want you to be engaged in what really matters. So I have. So I'm thinking youth can be engaged. Okay.
Can you just remove those people, please, if you can?
I'm not able to do it. Wait.
Just mute.
Akala, est-ce que tu peux désactiver ton micro? Voilà. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, so a couple of things that I want you to think about. As an immigrant mother, I have two young daughters, obviously as young as all of you, at 30, in their 30s. And so I want you to think about the laws of sustainable growth. If I can reiterate those for you. Number one, it stopped people-pleasing parents. When we come from a community of really being kind to each other and all those things, sometimes we have this big deficiency, which I call it the PPP. People-pleasing parents do not take us for any growth. Right? That's one. The second law of sustainable growth is called the law of the mirror, because you must see value in yourself to add values to others and to yourself. The second law is the law of awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself, right? As a young person, especially. And then the third law is the law of modeling, because it's hard to improve when you have no one but yourself to follow. We always think of saying, hey, I'm going to be a great role model, but I need to be my role model to myself first before I can even think how I'm going to be impacting others. So I hope that helped you a little bit. And Milsat.
Yes, very much. Thank you, Mr. Tsegga. We have Dativ Umwina. Raise your hand. Please, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I have a bad network. You excuse me, I'll keep my video off. And I would love, first of all, to thank our guest today. Thank you so very much for your wonderful and insightful presentation. My name is Dative Uwimana. I'm from Burundi, and I am the director of the Francophone chapter at African Rebirth. So my question will be, I will ask my question as a Francophone speaker. And hello?
Yes.
Oh, yes, thank you. So I will ask my question as a Francophone speaker. We are talking about diplomacy and the UN, and you said that if we talk about that, it's also we also talk about negotiation. It's about negotiating. Now I wanted to ask you, as someone who's there, who worked there, do you think that there are enough or fair opportunities for French-speaking countries? Because when we have, like, I will just give a little example of the MUN, the Model United Nations. When we have like simulations for young people, it's always in English. So do you think there are some opportunities for French-speaking countries so that we know how to apply them with all our members in the Francophone chapter? Because we would love also to participate, like even those who can't speak English or have a bad English, so we'll be able to participate and learn those skills, negotiation skills. And yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
No, thank you. And one of the challenges that we have in Africa, you just mentioned, and anywhere else, I think oftentimes, is the access to technology. So that's one of the challenges that we have, that all of you young people in this room can really address it, whether it is through public policy, where government need to really release the ICT issues that they have, or is it also something else that needs to happen, or maybe create your own company that allows the nation where you're living to be a better place for people to have access to technology, because that is going to be almost one of the biggest human rights issue for many, because it's access to education is happening through that, access to healthcare is happening through that. So technology is going to be a big thing. So be thinking about that as one of your passion and purpose. So I'm happy to hear that you are also from the Francophone space, and absolutely, the UN has a huge contingency of French-speaking projects. I have a friend of mine actually that she is in Mali right now, and Cote d'Ivoire, and so they're doing projects because that's where many of the needs are, and so so go on to the JobNet. JobNet is where it's, and I'm putting my information on the side, on the chat, and see what's out there. But I definitely believe that if you have what it takes to work for them, I don't work specifically directly with the UN. I just want to make sure that you know that. But I want you to know that I've worked in a space where we supported their work, and also we find that their mission is obviously lofty. But I think I definitely believe that you can have more opportunities anywhere that you can pick up. And also sometimes it's always good if you have access to the local UN rep, have a conversation with them. That's another way for you to following up with questions. And then when you go there to ask the question, make sure that keep the question open-ended. It's not like asking, do you have a job, and say yes or a no. And say, you make sure that the jobs typically are not only online, but are also through relationship and networking with people that are doing either the job or they know that they do that job. So it's a common thread everywhere, not only for you wanting to work for you. So just keep on questioning and finding the right people or connecting with the right people. And then I've also put my name on it. If I know anybody and you think you want to talk to somebody, you can always ask me and say, do you know this person? I think that's how I definitely connect with all of you. So if you look my information on LinkedIn, if you have a LinkedIn profile, I like to keep it easy and possible for people that want to get this information. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Ms. Tsegga, for your response, and Datif for your question. I think it's a very relevant one. I myself, I'm from the Francophone side of Africa, but I've come to realize that to be seen or to make an impact or a global impact in this field of international affairs and diplomacy, it's best to know one or two of the languages spoken at the UN, so English and French and other languages. So like you said, Madam, we can also try engaging at the local level, but of course, if you want to go global and international, then you have to understand how the system works. And so far, the lingua franca of international affairs is English, unfortunately. So Dativ, like she said, there are of course opportunities, but yeah, you have to understand how the system works so that you can, make a strategy and everything. So thank you. I see Peter raised his hand. Please, Peter, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm going to ask my question briefly, though there are quite many. I'm sure you are going to cope with me. I think you're hearing me, right?
Yes.
All right, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, actually, Madam Ms. Tsegga, for your wonderful presentation. Actually, it's been so very wonderful, and I've learned a lot from your presentation. And I have actually some of the questions that I would like to ask from you here, so that you give me some knowledge. One thing I know is that when people talk about diplomacy, there's certain thing that comes in our mind. And basically myself, when you talk about diplomacy, things that I talk about maybe working outside your country, maybe a war-torn countries or in a different part of the world, maybe giving humanitarian services to the people. And because of that, I get to know that some of the challenges that people go through. For example, the mental health problems, the traumatization or the stigmatization and the violence that people go through when working within these countries. So one question I would like to ask is like, how do you overcome such challenges in case you become one of the people who is involved in such challenges? That's one of my questions. And another question that I would like also to ask is like, as a people working at the global system or in the global level there, and what are the challenges or what is the biggest challenge facing the diplomat at the global level? That is one of the questions that I would like to also to actually to help me. And lastly, and as somebody who has actually worked at the global level like you are, what does your career look like in the role you are playing right now? And what does greatness look like in case somebody would want to take part in that kind of or becoming an advocate for social impact? So thank you. These are the three questions that I actually would like to answer. I think I'm clear.
Okay, Peter, thank you. So the way I understood you, I think, was obviously to ask the questions about what are the challenges of diplomacy right now. I'm not a diplomat, so I would not know. But what I do know is I follow a lot of diplomats that are trying to do the job. I was on a call just a few days ago with the Institute of Peace, and there were quite a few ambassadors that people that know about the world as it is. And so one of the biggest challenges that we have right now is peace and prevention of conflict, and also human rights activities. They seem to be one of the largest things, and arms dealing with so many countries that we're not finding solutions through a peaceful ways. Obviously, when there is no peace, there is no prosperity. When there is no prosperity, there is hunger, there is displacement, there are refugee issues and things like that. So that's one of the biggest challenges that I see. World peace is important. And then now we are adding other things that are related to, the food security is an issue, another big issue that we have. So if you're looking for ways to really impact the world, I think I would focus on those things. Hopefully we're not going to get through those for a long time, but it's a fact of life. It looks like peace has been away from many countries. And so, and for peace to happen is obviously got to be a resilient negotiator, because each party wants to say something while the other one doesn't want to listen. And so those are the kind of, so you have to be a good listener and really understand and have the right emotional intelligence and the cultural intelligence that needs to happen in order for you to really do what's necessary to bring peace about without offending any one of the parties. That's one. Protection and access. I think the young person earlier was also asking about what the situation is about technology, for example. So how much of this we can protect and have access to capital, access to education, access to healthcare, access to a lot of things is really diminished. So what kind of knowledge would we have to really make sure that we really back that? So knowledge of those things, as I said earlier, what does the UN want, or what do companies want? They want to solve problems or challenges in the world. So how are you coming? Whether you are, the fact that you speak the various languages is obviously a big asset, but how are you going to solve those world challenges in either containing them or preventing them? And then also sustainably live the world where it needs to be. We have issues with girls' education right now in some nations where girls' education is not really necessary, but in essence, it is necessary because they make the poverty can be eradicated if we have women or girls go to school. We have issues with youth disengagement. Not every youth is happy right now in many countries. Many of the youth that we know are leaving their home country and going through arduous way of traveling and go and try to live a different life in Europe and any other countries. But that's not happening. It's a very, because if one has to do the cost net benefit analysis, you find that there's a lot of issues into really managing the immigration issue. And so who can we lean in, or who can we champion on should be our question. What are we going to do about this adapting positive practices? How can we really help our national leaders or global leaders to really make that decision, the intentionality behind what they're saying? Because oftentimes you are in a room, I don't know if there are some, I was listening to a gentleman just a few days ago where he said he always went to many UN meetings because he's somebody who's very much interested in the soil. And that's one of the 17 goal plans, I think. And so, but it looked like he was the only one who was intentionally thinking about the soil, and everybody else in that room from UN, from anywhere else, were coming to really make a business out of it. And so where do we stand? And you, all of you, I'm so inspired and hopeful that you're thinking ahead to remove the barriers to growth, peace, and all the other things that we really need. And in closing, I also want to say, have a look at the Sustainable Development Goal plans, because that's the biggest thing that the private public sector is looking at. The UN is looking at the SDG like that's the only way they're making business from. The companies like Credit Suisse, IBM, Goldman Sachs, all of them are looking at ways, how are they making a difference in the world? Whether it's climate change, how is their supply chain? Whether they're doing diversity, how are they hiring? Whether they're doing, how are they really looking at climate change and making sure that they use products that are really sustainable. So there's a lot of stuff. So when the private sector is really becoming interested in this, the public sector will definitely follow. So where do you stand in this? Where are you? How can you really align yourself with this? And so finding ways to, especially when you look at from an African perspective, I think we need to look at what does the Agenda 2063 say? What's my role there? Is it leapfrogging from the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal Plans 2030? How old are you now? With the show of hands, actually, if you could write your ages, if you don't mind, on each on the chat. You know, I would really be interested to know how old you are. See, you're 20, and Sibong Lile. And so 2030 is almost down the road. And what will you be doing by 2030? How are you going to impact the world? Mitzat says she's 22. That's amazing. And so when you look at these numbers, your future career, and I think you asked about what my future career, for me, it's time for me to give back because I've been blessed enough to have received so much and learned a lot. But I'm also learning, relearning, and unlearning certain things that I need to do. And so I needed to be engaged, 24, 23. Just think about what it will be by 2030. What will you be doing? How are you going to impact in the 17 goals right now? And so will you be the ambassador representing your nation? And if so, what will be the main issues? Will you be fighting for girls that are not going to school? Will you be fighting for young people that are being incarcerated for reasons that are not really appropriate? So be thinking about, focus on something that it's going to be not only helping you to become the leader you're meant to be, because I have hope and aspiration for all of you, but I also wanted to think, what will I do in 2030? I know I probably don't even know what I will be doing in the next few hours, but I think it's important for you to have a strategic mind and growth mindset so you can think about how will I be the ambassador of my nation? Because ambassadorship is not only, the 173 ambassadors that the UN has from all the nations, member nations, does not represent all of us. But how will I be an ambassador of my mindset to really make a difference in my own community? How can I create that company that's going to make a difference? So that's how I wanted to think. And perhaps, I'm so excited to be in this room full of 20-year-olds and really, really blessed to be in your company.
Thank
I
you.
hope that.
Yes, that was really insightful and helpful. I hope for all. And it's nice to see the different age that we have here. It's amazing to have different people from with different ages. So we have a few more questions. Christian asks, does UN institutions ever lack youth participant in its activities? If yes, what are some of the challenges and solutions?
So I put a link to all of you to see the Act for SDGs.org. Go look into that and see how you can really make a difference. We all know that you are the future. And there's no way that, people like me with this gray hair can really make a difference. It's your world, it's your time, it's your action. So look into that and definitely, but they do engage a lot of young people, but I don't know if you are interested in engaging yourself more into the SDGs. I think I would suggest you consider that as one way for you to really find. Do you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the SDGs? With the show of hands, can you tell me if you do know about anything about the SDGs or you're working on the SDGs? Can you put it in the chat for me so I can see what's happening?
There are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so, so how it's like, when you go to a restaurant, there's a menu, right? And so this menu, and I wish I could share my screen. Would you let me share my screen? I think it's probably easier for me to, let me see if I could find the image.
How you can.
Okay.
You can.
It's fine. Or you can, why don't you, if any one of you is interested in looking at what the SDGs looks like, I think you could put it on the screen I think that would be good for us. And I want to talk about it briefly before I think the favorite one is this. Okay, here.
Sure. Can you share that music?
Sorry,
Can
share
you share?
that.
Yes. Is it the link?
Yeah, share the screen with. Okay, maybe this one.
Is it the link you sent?
Okay, no. Here, I'm gonna
Okay.
share my screen and see what. Okay, can you see this? And by the way, it's in every language, in French, English, in anything you want to. And if you go to this website, you'll see. So it's like you go into a restaurant. And then when you go to a restaurant, they're showing you all this big menu. They can tell you there is beef, there is chicken, there is French fries, there is salad, there is any kind of meal that you need to eat. But because you cannot eat it all, you choose one or two. So I want you to think about, what does this mean? This is, for me, it's like my menu for life, especially for all of you that are in your 20s. Have a look at this. And I'm sure you are already working on each one of them. You see, this is goal number 1. It talks about no poverty. What does it mean? So zero hunger. Maybe you're already taking care of zero hunger. You're probably working in an environment that is really looking at that. Some of you might be, goal number 3, as you can see here, is about good health and well-being. Maybe some of you are already in the medical field. You're working on something like that. Number 4 for me is quality education, especially for young people. Access to education is really a human rights issue. Number 5 is gender equality. So if you keep on looking at this, and all of them, as you can see, number 8, for example, is decent work and economic growth. Any one of this, if they could create a job, if they could create an economic growth for the nation you are in, then you are really doing very well already. And this could be also your portfolio. You could take organizations, whether they are private sector or even the UN itself. And then number 17, you cannot do this alone. When you do 17, partnership for the goals, you definitely have to have some partners in doing this. And I think when you, I want you to think about, if it is possible, my suggestion would be to have, if you have not decided on what you want to do, whether it's your career, your education, or a business opportunity, there is a lot to be done on this. And each one of them has different kinds of goals. And I'm sure you will find a purposeful living in really tackling any of this 16 challenges, and the 17 obviously it's for you to really be connected with all the organizations who do. And there's plenty work to be done. So be thinking about that, and making sure that this is also part of the African Union Agenda 2063. What are they saying? Why do they say what they're saying? Do they have the right people? Then Milsat maybe can raise her hand and say, okay, you know what, I'll represent my nation. You said you're in Malaysia or you're from the Comoro Islands?
I'm from Comoros.
Okay, so maybe you will be the representative of Comoros in at the AU, or you will be anywhere else for that matter. You know, you could be in many other places. And so I see this, Henok, and all of you, Nikki and Surafel, and all of you that are really on this call this morning, and Liz, you know, I don't want to be leaving anybody else. You can do this. And because you do it, you'll make that change that is necessary for this. Sibongile, Fashingabo, Lontofbeko, you know, David, George, you know, all of you have the possibility of making that difference by being the difference that you are here. And so I am excited to have been in your company. I know I don't want to hold you, but I'm open for a few more questions if you have, but I'm really, hopefully I've opened up something for you to look at, because you're the diplomats. All the older diplomats that are there, they're going to leave. And who are they going to be replaced but by you? Why are they going to be replaced? Because they need to tackle these problems. They have not done anything for it. And so just think about your role in this world. And you'll say, you know what? Mama Tsegga, I did say something like this, and I know I was going to present it to my country. So go for it and enjoy life while you do it, and let me know how I can help.
Thank you, Ms. Medine, for these insightful and helpful advices. I think given us the push we needed, intellectually speaking. So we'll try our best to find what we're good at or what we can become good at, become best at it. So we are coming to the end of this session. It was amazing. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I will give back the floor to Enoch to wrap up the session. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Very good discussions, engagement. When people here, working in international organization, some people think I have some special connections, but you can start from zero up, zero to up to something.
Mhm.
So very, very possible. I see people in their 20s, some of us in 20, 30, will be in our hundreds, possibly. Yeah. So, but the bottom line is that it's not too late to start a revolution of what you want to be and what you want to be. And you can hear from the horse's mouth her experiences, her motivations, like she wants to give back to community. That's what development is all about. And most people, like even countries that give back to their communities, they grow. So thank you very much, Tsegga, for your time and your kind words and insights, expertise in ensuring that the future of Africa is brighter. And everyone, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure talking, and have a very good day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you very much.